Good morning, you all.
Greetings. This is April 30th. This is the PCI forum, our PCI community call. Delighted to have you with us. And we had originally thought we were going to have David Norfors with us to talk about the people-centered economy. Good book. You will want to join that call when David's available. He had some personal issues that prevented him from being with us, so we will get that rescheduled. Our ever vigilant Schneider Alfonso is on the case, so thanks to Schneider for that. So today we have a PCI open mic. We welcome your thoughts, your ideas, anything that you want to bring to the table. So your voices are more than welcome. So I see that Harry and Bruce have their mics open. So great to see you folks. Anything on your mind, Bruce, Harry?
Yeah, I noticed. I just got an email from Mei Lin about 5 minutes ago that I haven't fully read, but
Mhm.
about a lot of people in the country having their internet service cut off on the 30th because of lack of funding for the affordable. I again, I didn't read the whole thing, but I thought, my
All right.
goodness, that's something.
There was, the FTC, I think it was late last week, uh, said that they were going to go back to not throttling, all right, and having different tiers of service, and that everyone was going to have, same access to, to the internet and its speed, right, as opposed to the tiering that we were talking about. Uh, they're not related, Bruce, because Maylin is really talking about no service at all, right? But
Right, exactly.
yeah, so we have, in my opinion, a couple of things happening simultaneously. We have um, some of the, it may be, I'm making uh, an inference here, is that perhaps there was some subsidy that was provided during COVID that's running out. All right, that there was CARES Act funding. I don't know. But let's talk about access in general. Uh, there is a discussion that access to the internet is becoming a human rights issue, right? Does does that sound right to you, Bruce?
Yes
Right?
and no. Yes and
Okay,
no.
say more.
Okay, so let's take a look at the highway system
Okay.
in this country. Everybody has access to that. It's paid for by a number of sources, including a gas revenue tax, and other sources of funds that I don't really know in detail what those are. But the point is that everybody has access.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at it that side and I say, well, truly, if we're really going to try to improve our connectivity throughout the country, I don't know that you can't have that. On the other hand, there is an ongoing cost to provide that service. And is
Mm.
that something that is that everybody is going to have access to, or is it going to be more like a toll road?
Mm. I could also make the observation that um, while access to the interstate highway system is, a lot of it is free, you have to have a
Right.
vehicle. You have to have a vehicle to use it, all right, which means that, that there's a certain amount of, you know, ownership that's necessary, or rental, or whatever it is, to be able to take advantage of it. If you're just a pedestrian, you can't use it.
No, but every single person who buys any kind of a commodity got that commodity because it was brought on the roads via truck.
That's true. Absolutely right. Well said. All right. On in my career, I was present when intermodal transportation was a new thing. You know, the high cube. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Bruce. So we all benefit in
Well,
that
wasn't
way.
there, excuse me, hi, everybody.
Hi, Mark.
Wasn't there a bill just passed that said we will provide internet access to rural communities? That I just heard something on the news about that, and that the goal is to really have everybody, at least in the US, have access to the internet.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different fundings going on. For instance, RDOF, I think that was about $6 billion. There was another funding mechanism of 54 billion in Kansas. They got about $1 billion to help build rural broadband. I guess, Bruce, to your point about, they had this program, they have lots of different programs out there, but one of them was to have a $30 subsidy that like AT&T would have to provide, basically with the subsidy, free internet service at a certain data rate. They only had funding for a certain amount. I thought I saw AT&T said that they were actually going to extend even past that date, that they would make it free. So basically how that system worked is you would apply if you had like Social Security, if you were on food stamps or whatever, and you would get a number, and then you give it to your like AT&T, your ISPs, and then they would give you a $30 plan, but then you get a subsidy with this number that you got from the government, and then you had no costs. So bottom line is there's lots of subsidies out there. If some of them go away for a while, I still think there's lots of money in the United States, especially to provide a low-cost internet service. Should it be free, or should it be, have some subsidy? We can have an argument on that, but they also have, like, there's what you're paying. If you look at your fund, there's a fund, I forget what it's called, but you're paying $1 a month basically to subsidize other people, to give them free internet or free cell phone service if they're under a special threshold, right? And
I think what I heard was about laying cable to places that don't.
Right. That's part of
underserved.
that $54 billion. And also they're like, I don't know if you follow, there was an auction called RDOF, and Elon Musk actually, or I shouldn't call it Elon, SpaceX, Starlink, bid on some areas to say, hey, I will provide service at this price. And then the FCC said, okay, we don't believe you, and so we're not going to take away those bidding credits. And
So what we're doing essentially is what we did in the middle of the previous century with the Rural Electrification Act.
exactly
Is to
Exactly the same thing.
access, available to everyone, no matter how remote they are, is to get a footprint in place that allows everyone to have access. And that was an infrastructure build out issue.
Yeah, by the way, I'm in rural areas, very rural areas. I still think satellite is the optimal solution. And so what the FCC did, taking away Starlink's, application, was, I think, a complete disaster. And you're going to have less people having access to internet service, not more, not more. But
it's interesting, going back to what you said, Kevin, at the beginning about the human rights. And if you think, and I always put things in the frame of young people. And so the question is, do young people have a right to this? And the people who take it away from them are usually the parents. And they say you can't have the phone, you can't have this, you can't have it, or you can only have it in certain hours, you can only have it at certain ages. And is that something that's what I'm most interested in discussing, because I think it is a human right and everybody should have it. It's not like driving where you have to be 18. And I'm happy to discuss that.
But
hey, Mark, if I
you're
could jump
really
in, that's a great reference point, because the thing about paying attention to the future and why it's important is that's where we're going to spend the rest of our lives. Some of us more than others when you make a point about young people. So I'm sorry, Kevin, I didn't mean to cut you off. I like this conversation. I dropped something on the RDOF. It's more recent, but I think there was something in 2020 back on some of these things. And who comes to mind for me on this is the FCC chair, Jessica Rosenworcel, has been very clear about looking at broadband as a utility, I know that's controversial. And first off, I haven't seen everybody. I've been 7 years as a DoD civilian. I'm teleworking today. I'm still over at the National Defense University at the College of Information and Cyberspace. The internet that's on my mind, Kevin, is the kind that I think Palmer Lucky. So it's Palmer Lucky Day for me wearing a Hawaiian shirt. But companies like Anduril, where you look at where the internet reaches out and starts to, drop its tethers. So embedded AI, and how do we go there? But back to this conversation, and Bruce, your point about it being a right. One thing I think the connection between AI and broadband, it's so great to see you guys and talk internet again. So an internet of the people, if we have that broadband, you can give people a chance they don't have to do something very important, which is shape the development of the contextual AI that we need, right? Because if you have no say, if you can't reach some of these databases, these smaller models, which are important, then how can you even determine, what type of trustworthy ethical AI we're going to have if you don't have broadband to connect into where it's being developed in the first place? So in addition to democratizing the internet or just even getting to the internet, I would love at some point for us to, talk more. And I've been gone, so maybe you've been talking about it, but what does it mean to democratize the development of AI that works for everybody? So thanks. Good to see everybody again.
Well, Harry, you misquoted me there a little bit. I
Okay.
didn't say that the internet was a right. I didn't stipulate that. And I'm not arguing that it is or it isn't, but I don't think that it is. I mean, I think that we have too many things in this country and in the world at large that people think they have a right to when they truly don't. They have,
Yes.
that, and there's a distinction there that I think is important.
I couldn't agree with you more. And in fact, I'm going to hold up something, show and tell. I'm one of those guys. So one thing I've loved about being a professor over at NDU is our tradition here in the United States. And if we consider where some other countries within NATO, some of our closest allies, where they're going on this issue of a right versus something that comes about as a result of capitalism that's tempered by liberal democracy, that's where we are. I get it. But it's interesting. If you look at international law, thank goodness we've got a lady who's a leader on the ITU. Finally, the U.S. had stepped back too much from how this develops. But I think there is an important part of the democratic world, right? Rule of law that's going in the direction of saying, oh, I think this is a right. Europe, that's what I'm talking about. So it's interesting. That's another angle for the conversation. Is it a right or is it not? And a different context, and I'll be quiet on this. So thanks for correcting me, Bruce. I just jumped in and you're right. But on the right side, related to this, something that I do think about at work, which is if we have a time when, say, I don't know, Beijing decides it wants to take down networks, the issue of whether cutting off civilian access to communication networks like the internet is something that's being fought through with the groups out of Tallinn, Estonia, the CCDCOE. Is it an illegitimate target to take down the internet that people use versus the internet that could impact, so that's a different question than rights. But while we're in a neighborhood, just wanted to share a little bit about the stuff that I think about for the internet as a DoD civilian teaching, our leaders who are not just military. We have folks from all over the government and from around the world. So agree with you, right versus, something different, Bruce. I could talk with you all day about it. So thanks.
Put your book, the book that you held up, into chat so we can find it, please.
Yes, of course. I'll put it in there. Eliza Watt, I was impressed with her. I wanted a different perspective on cyber law. We're calling it governance now. But Eliza Watt is with the university over in the UK. So one of our Five Eye friends. But the book is called State-Sponsored Cyber Surveillance. And it's interesting. Not only is she making a case, her right that she's talking about is there a right against having mass dragnet surveillance from other states?
I'm going to put that right next to my Shoshana Zuboff book.
Yeah, there you go. Surveillance capitalism. It's in the neighborhood.
And speaking of books, I just put into the chat, I hope you will all be beta readers if you have the time and interest of my new book, Third Millennium Kids. So it's a guide for people born in the second millennium, which I think is most of us, who are preparing young people for the third millennium. So I'd love to have all your input if possible.
So Mark, all right, to the point that you were making earlier, please give me a perspective on what the access to internet rights are that you have in mind versus what we would, consider parental rights to raise their children in the way that they, choose.
Well, I think I hope that parental rights will evolve in the third millennium because parents think they own their kids. And somebody said Ross do I don't know how to pronounce his name from the New York Times, just had a quote where it's generally accepted that we can do things in a democracy for young people, to young people, that we can't do to adults. And I think that is something that is up for discussion. I think that the idea to absolutely raise your kids the way you want to do it and deprive them of things that you don't think they should have, like medical care or other things, is something that's going to get seriously debated and discussed in the third millennium.
Okay, well, the with given that it's a gradient, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that you can go back to an infant and ask it what it wants. Okay, so the fact is, if you if you have some notion that I'm not aware of, all right, about how to ascertain those things, because it starts to sound a little bit like an Ayn Rand novel, all right, when go ahead. You're shaking your head, so I'm
Well, my perspective is that we're going to see a lot of things that we didn't see before. I think, for example, right now, I think babies have definitely wants and needs that they do express in their cries and stuff like that, that we can't really decipher yet. That we're not good at figuring that stuff out, and it's hard to tell that sometimes whether a baby's crying because they need to be diaper changed, or because they're hungry, or because whatever else it is. But we're just like we're doing with animals, we're starting to understand a lot more about kids. And most of the time, we don't even ask. So once they can talk, they should be able to tell us stuff. But we rarely ask, we assume, and we do, and we put, and what every adult does, I did, everybody does with their kids, we own them. And basically, we could do whatever we want with them. And that is an attitude that's always bothered me.
okay. Very good. Well,
Mark,
we'll
on your
read the
your
book
point
and we'll
about a
learn
sphere of
more.
protection around there, I just wanted to make a point about privacy from another book I'm making my way through. A lot of people talk about privacy, but what Kevin was getting to from a different direction, having that sphere around you, having like saying this is where my community, my home starts. In other words, how do you what right do you have, Bruce? I mean it in this way, to protect maybe your kids from influences you don't want them to have, right? That's an interesting way to look at, and this is Neil Richards who writes this book, Why Does Privacy Matter? I think he puts it, or Why Privacy Matters. That's an interesting way of looking at it, saying that it's a way to say, I need a certain place in which the state cannot intrude, and that I'm allowed to bring my child up, or we as a community can, and it's just a different way of looking at it. So when you think about media, think about TikTok, for example. Do you have the protection to protect your kids? Not free speech. I don't think that's the right question, but from the influences of an autocratic government, right, that doesn't play by the same rules that we do, and
It's
that can use
interesting
technology to get into that mind development in a way that's not there. So that's not talked about enough. So just wanted to bring that point up, Kevin, from a different direction on
Yeah,
how you
I
protect
mean,
kids.
it's interesting that, for the TikTok argument, that most of the social media companies that are US based are not allowed in China.
Yes, that reciprocity is a one-word hook to start a different to start what I think is
I
a right
mean,
conversation.
it's kind of like, yeah,
Reciprocity.
okay.
Yeah,
Let our companies into your culture, please.
right. Do you have Google Street View where you are? Well, if not, then maybe we need to talk about our premises.
And Harry, I'd like to talk to you separately about this at some length, because privacy, I've never seen privacy as a right. Privacy is an invention. Privacy is something that we invented, that we say we want, and therefore we legislate. but it's not necessarily a right. And, in the old days, nobody made you wear clothes or do anything or stay this, or you couldn't look at anybody. And, I'm talking the very old days, but but we invented that. And we said, gee, that maybe our lives will be better off if we have some privacy. And so it's certainly not a right like we should be able to live.
Hey, Mark,
No,
you got
I-
it? You got it? You're making me think of the Supreme Court case from 2018, Carpenter versus United States. Remember that, everybody? The cell site tower case?
Mhm.
But there's a
Mhm.
dissent in that case that absolutely, let's talk. I put my emails in the chat here. I think we already know how to find each other. But yes, this invention, and some people would say the Brandeis brief about it really helped people who were rich and missed a lot of points. But the dissent in the Carpenter case from 2018 talks about, in the founder's time, it really was about physical world. Like if you have redcoats coming to my house, searching my person, that's a very different thing. It's not the same as the penumbra out of which we've created or woven this concept of privacy as it exists today. So absolutely love to talk with you about it.
We'll talk.
All right, so that was a good starter conversation. Anybody have another topic that they would like to inject into our open discussion today? Raise your
Yeah,
hand,
go ahead.
Suzanne.
Oh, yeah, Suzanne,
And
please.
then
Oh,
we'll go to
no,
Doug. Suzanne, what do you got?
I think this is just an incredible topic. Of course, the internet and the right to access, the right
Mhm.
to be provided. It's a complex question, but taking it even a step further, as everything is becoming so digitized, right? Our medical information, it begs the question, of course, is it a human right, that everybody have access to medical care? And because medical care will be a internet based, especially with the intersection of AI, with more and more of that, right? Web based. This brings up so many amazing questions for us to dive into. There's medical care, then as more people get on the internet and the privacy to their health data, our DNA, and it just seems inevitable that as more people get access to medical care, the internet's going to be needed for us to collect that data to solve real world problems, diseases. It develops so many more questions for further thought.
The
So
HIPAA regulations have actually caused, in some cases, people to not be able to access their own medical information. Which is
correct.
an interesting,
Correct.
reach around in terms of, now it's like Get Smart. If you guys remember, the cone of silence, that it's now so secure that you can't hear anything, can't communicate anymore. So anyway, it's we create sometimes as many problems as we solve. Suzanne, that's excellent. Doug, you were about to jump in with something good.
Yeah. So I've been working on a little bit of, well, one is healthcare and AI, and how to leverage AI for healthcare, and like right now there's about 3 million, doctors and nurses in the country, and healthcare providers. And the question is, how do we have access, thinking about abundance and access to all. And can we use AI to help with that? There's a lot of people that don't follow their treatment plan. Also, even if you have access to healthcare, are you getting the best healthcare? And unfortunately, 3 million people, according to the World Health Organization, die every year because they don't follow, because they don't have, because of medical errors. 50% of it's due to medication. So, the question is how, going to Suzanne, to your comment, is how do we have access to healthcare that's high quality, the best care possible for every person? And so I'm looking at the internet and AI for that. There's 5.2 billion people that have a smartphone. And how many of us are using their smartphone to help maximize our healthcare every day?
Right, Doug. And we're willing to sacrifice privacy when one of our kids gets stolen for sex trafficking, right? You go, God, I wish I had that chip, wish he was chipped.
But
Yeah.
hey guys, What do you think
Sorry.
about the fact that some people say, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to get all this advanced healthcare, like a full body MRI can be bought for $2,000 now, but it's like, well, my doctor said, oh, I won't look at that. There were no symptoms. And everybody can afford that. So it's not really fair for Kimberly to get a full body MRI that's, preventative because the whole country can't.
Yeah, well, in Japan, because they have lower resolution scanners that cost $100,000 instead of $1.5 million per copy, everybody gets an annual MRI scan. It's part of their annual, treatment, but it's a lower resolution, right? So if you generally see something on that, they send you to the more sophisticated one to get, something that is, much more, refined and diagnostic in nature. So it's just interesting that we haven't actually applied the technology that's available or scaled it in ways that can make it, more affordable. We have other models that we can draw from, but Kimberly, absolutely understand, that's what you're describing is opt-in, kind of the concierge, right, model. And it's, there's a group of people who are subscribing to concierge care on top of, what's, generally available to the public and general healthcare plans. And you're not going to get that, from insurance. You have to write a check. So it's it's checkbook medicine.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, hi, Alan.
Here. Hello, Kevin. I heard, I think it was Kimberly mention the word fair. It's not fair that somebody can pay for an MRI and are you in America?
No, I'm in Silicon Valley, which is on the edge of California, which is attached to America, but I don't think it's America because over half of us don't speak English at home here, and it is very global, and it's nothing like the America that my family lives in.
Got it. But you pay taxes to the United States of America.
Unfortunately.
Got it. So when Canada takes over California, we'll be in a better place. We're going to take over the whole West Coast, just the West Coast. You can keep the rest over there.
Because my husband is Canadian, and if we move to Canada, I can become a citizen there in 2 years, and that's our plan if the whole place goes to shit.
That's another that is another elite trend is getting 2 passports. Right.
Well, the other thing,
business and people, wanting to have, 2 passports. Go ahead, Alan.
The interesting thing here in Canada is that we forbid you to pay to jump a line, and we forbid you to pay for extra care and these things. But it really doesn't matter because we can just drive for 3 hours south and go to America. So we kind of have the best of both worlds. People are like, oh, the healthcare in Canada sucks. And you're like, okay, well, just if you don't like it, if you're not happy with the free, you just drive 3 hours or fly an hour and you're fine. So we kind of have the best here. But the whole fairness thing, I mean, America's literally built on not being fair.
Yeah, if you can get an airplane ticket, there are certain destination locations that are really good for plastic surgery, or really good for hip replacements, or really good for knee surgeries, all right? That they have specialization, and it's kind of like, oh, you need to go to Thailand for that one, right? And it's destination, tourism medicine, right?
I heard you can get like new organs from China.
And a lot of those doctors have been trained in the US.
Hey, Alan and Kimberly, I'd like to tease out something about ground truth. And fairness is such a hard concept. So something I would love everybody's help with is thinking through a certain corner of the metaverse for trying to examine arguments like this, right? And digital twin is what a nerd like me would call it, but politicians will fall asleep if you say digital twin. So applying a metaverse to understand models of healthcare, for example. And as a marker, the Atlantic Council, I think last year had an event, it's on YouTube, on trying to get digital twins into the federal enterprise more. And so there's a story that I want to use as an anchor for what this type of metaverse looks like. Tyndall Air Force Base is very important to DoD. F-35 Lightnings, very advanced aircraft, It's based out of there. $45 billion to rebuild Tyndall Air Force Base, Tyndall with a Y. And they use digital twin, Unity from Microsoft, gaming engine physics, all that. But just call it a metaverse. Wouldn't it be interesting if you could look at the things, Kimberly, that happen not just at the edge of the United States with Silicon Valley as you joke, but also, Alan, for the healthcare in Canada, but maybe all democracies and the folks, and just we've got to pull ourselves out of the world of just going, let's look at spreadsheets or Norman Rockwell style. I don't know, I'm going to stand up and, is this commissioner going to hear me or this senator? And actually saying, how can we build models? And this is an extension of the internet. This is a part of the internet, right? So why not use AI and the attachment or connectivity? And so if you put differential privacy into that and that MRI scan, maybe it doesn't have to be lower detail. Perhaps, and once you start to have these sorts of scales, then we can understand as a baseline where we all are. So I'm just really interested, how do we pull digital twin technology into the social sciences and other sciences, not just aerospace where it was born? And
And
yes,
if you
I will
don't
call it
know,
metaverse.
Alan is a metaverse provider.
What's that, Mark?
Alan has a metaverse company. He does, that's
Oh,
what he
excellent. There
does.
are no accidents. There we go.
Our company is actually called Metaverse. We called it that before the hype waves.
There you go.
And we have done digital twins for medical devices. Here's one. I'm doing this live, as you can see.
Oh, I love it. I just followed you on Twitter, but let's connect, Alan. I'd love to
Please.
talk to you about it.
We do a lot of training for Siemens Healthineers for their medical devices. This is not one of theirs. Actually, this is the only one that we did that isn't theirs because we can't show their stuff publicly. But yeah, we do. They call it preview, practice, perform, but teaching people about how to use the machines, how to repair and replace all of these as well. So you can learn about these in any language. We actually do it in, I think, 4 languages now. You can even show people things that you can't do in a physical world. Like
This is great. Alan, I think you might not have been on when I mentioned I've been teaching at the National Defense University for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
I have a class where I do CIO 2.0, even though I'm a lawyer and having been a Navy SEAL at law school. So I've been in telecom and other things with the internet, but I've dealt with C-suite people when I was at Google for a couple of years as a policy counsel, and so we go through an example of using digital twin technologies to design the type of hardware we'd need in hospitals to deal with the next pandemic. So I said, hey, here's a use case. What if you're working with HHS and you want to have a smart ventilator system? So
Love it.
How would you design that? So you're just the guy to talk to. Love to connect with you offline.
Actually, I was going to share you one more thing because I think here, let me share my screen. I don't know who stopped it there. I'll send you this. I actually sent you the link already. I'll put it in the chat. But I wrote an article called "The Lifetime Value of 3D Models Across the Enterprise."
Oh,
so
yes.
What is a 3D model? Design and manufacturing, simulation training, sales and marketing. So all the use cases of a 3D model. Because what we found is that companies have the 3D models because they manufacture things. What they don't do is share them across the enterprise. So, you can now save on photography, you can save on marketing, you can save on training. But yeah, it's there's a whole article on, design.
So put that into the chat. Put the link in there, my friend.
I'll do it right now.
Please.
And if
Thanks, Alan.
Kevin, I can expand this discussion a little bit on virtual twins. What we're seeing, and Richard is part of it, and a lot of people are part of this, and certainly Kyle, we're digital twins of people. And so we're making those. Those are the AIs that we're making in CE all together. And what I heard the other day that really interested me was a discussion about, well, suppose we all have digital twins of ourselves. And we wanted to have a discussion of just the digital twins where we weren't there. How would we produce the results of that discussion in a way that we could do? And wouldn't it be interesting to have a discussion absent anybody being present, but just that happened online between any high-level people or any historical people or anything that we could create, and then to see the results of that discussion come out in public in some way?
Yeah, I'll just say that it has been done. There are YouTube videos of chatbots talking to each other. I did an experiment over the weekend, Mark, with our own, with my first principles partner, Mike Wang. And rather than just setting them out at each other, I curated in between, just like I'm doing now. And I asked Mike some questions and I said, what do you think about that, Kevin? And I typed it into my chat bot, all right? And I moved it back and forth that way, all right? And it was interesting. Go ahead, Kimberly.
I went to NTT Upgrade 2024 downtown San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and they have developed different chatbots trained on different bodies of knowledge that sit around a conference table and talk to each other. So that's coming.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Hey
Yeah, I
guys,
mean,
sorry, I literally lost power, and so did my neighbors. I went out in the street and I was talking to people. So I just came back, talk about getting back on the internet. I just had to do it wirelessly in my front yard. So
Harry, you know, so we're back to the Rural Electrification Act. You need better electricity.
I know, even though I'm here with trees, it may look rural, but I'm a block away from Rock Creek Park. So
There you go.
yeah,
We're glad
northwest.
you're
Yeah,
back.
we lost power too. Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
I'm talking to my
we're
neighbor.
glad.
Yeah.
I live in the woods too, and that's why I've got a whole house generator attached to the house.
There
So
you go. Yeah,
I-
two is one and one
you
is
guys
none.
will not,
Three is
you'll
having
never get rid of
backup.
me, right?
Harry,
Yeah,
what's your last name? How do I find you on LinkedIn?
Wingo, Wingo. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find. First, Harry.
Gotcha.
That's not descriptive, so remember that. And Wingo's like bingo
Gotcha.
with a W. But you'll find I'm at NDU. But please, yeah, let's be in touch. I want to hear more about the. You were
I've
talking about 3D when it fell off, and so I missed some of your best material. I want to hear it later.
It's okay. I actually gave a talk for the National Defense University maybe about a year ago now. Up in Toronto, they had a group that came up here. You know, Kegs,
Say again.
a gentleman named Kegs. He goes by Kegs.
Kegs. That's a good nickname for
This is
some
call
communities.
sign.
But yeah, it's not ringing a bell right now. But yeah, I'd love to talk to you about also being a guest speaker. All of you. We're always looking for great voices to come in. Whether it's virtually or in person at Fort McNair. But thanks.
My friend Adrian Bolzaki also gave a talk recently on AI and generative AI for the defense.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, on AI, by the way, I'm really interested in what Hinton is doing on forward algorithms and the idea of mortal computers. And so analog meets digital, and where we're going on that, I think it's very important for things like ORAN, 5G, 6G in the network type items. And imagine what the new analog might look like for the electricity grid. So I look at robotic systems and also critical infrastructure and the law and policy around those. But AI is a big thing for me. So thanks.
Okay,
Amazing.
thank you. Spent a few years, Harry, and I'll just use this as a branching, conversation in terms of embodied intelligence in robotics,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For
Yes.
healthcare in Japan, because they were one of the first countries that started to have a decreasing population and not wanting to import labor, right? So as a result, a lot of government-supported innovation started to automate healthcare, right? Both in hospitals and other and they're modeling how to take care of yourself at home, because a lot of times people live for long periods of time alone in Japan.
Yes.
And they're not actually discovered that they're dead until weeks later, right? Because of their self-imposed isolation, right? So
Right.
home caregivers that are robotic, all right, are part of what Japan sees as its future, for healthcare, and that's going to be importable, right? We're going to be able to take that tech. Most of our robotic tech is DoD driven, where most of the tech in Japan is healthcare driven. So
Yes.
discuss, okay, what are the implications for us to be able to, take other cultures? I mean, there's a lot of drone stuff that we never thought was possible with really cheap stuff happening in Ukraine right now.
Absolutely.
So talk about it.
Yeah, and one other thing on the point about where Hinton is going, there's a YouTube video up. Just look for mortal computers. It's such an interesting concept. But imagine when you start putting
aging in place systems. So in other words, the home AI, the brain that you want your home or your apartment to have in Tokyo, if it has this type of system, it cannot do the surveillance capitalism type of connection for all purposes to everything. It'll be 1,000 times less energy, but I think there are inherent privacy and security aspects to going to different architectures. And think of Cerebras, for example, which is using 5 nanometers, and they're doing different wafers. Hinton's onto something, of course. He's godfather of AI, but over the next decade, to think about how things like that could work for healthcare, and absolutely looking non-DoD, whole of society, but also whole of alliance. Japan is an important partner, and we can learn from all corners. Thank you.
Alan, your hand's up. Go ahead.
So, Harry, to your point, I know this talk is a little bit more medical focused, but my mission in life is to create a new education system that prepares us for a post-AGI world using all the technologies. Yeah, I've been working on it for 8 years. I built Metaverse as the platform where anybody can go on any device into a virtual world and have conversations and build digital twins and do this from any device. We built it on the web because the web is the ultimate equalizer, and we built a game engine that is as powerful as Unity, but on the web, on the open browser.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I love this. My daughter's going to Dartmouth. She's going to Dartmouth for computer science, and her dream is to be like Khan Academy type of person. She is inspired by EdTech. So I love it.
We're calling it unlimitedawesome.com or unlimited awesome. And I'll put the link in here. We've I basically started working on it full time in March. We have 56 mentors signed that have signed up to help. Mark Prensky is one of them. I believe Suzanne, you're also on the list. Doug is on the list. We'll be announcing the first 100 very soon. And I'm going to be going on a fundraising tour around America, literally starting in Toronto, going all the way around the bottom and back up the coast. So it's going to be something special. And the idea is that it's not just a learning platform, it's teaching different skills. So it's not teaching math and science and geography and these things. It's teaching mindfulness, gratitude, positivity, deep breathing, yoga, mindfulness, exercise, healthy eating, healthy living, entrepreneurship, innovation, futurism, these types of things that are and encouraging everybody to be entrepreneurial in developing solutions to grand challenges in the world. So not just learning it, but doing it. And I think this is where Mark has really hammered it home to me, that it can't be just about reading it and doing it, or reading it and learning it. It has to be about doing it. And so what we have is an investment mechanism where the students earn money through doing these habitual things, but they have to invest a certain percentage of it back into a project. And then the company is like Techstars. It owns a percentage of each company, and that's how it perpetuates itself forever.
That's awesome. I want to hear more
ideas.
And let me add one word into your daughter's head, Harry, which the word is empotech. Instead of edtech, which is trying to teach people something, empotech is technology that empowers people to do stuff.
I love it. I'll tell her today.
So let's talk about that, and I'm happy to talk with her about that.
Oh, thank you. And I'm reminding her, of course, that something special in 1956 happened at her at Dartmouth. My wife went to Dartmouth too, but that whole little conference on AI. So thank you.
That's so
something
great.
low tech, right? That I always liked, like writing to read, okay, is also an important. I think that we should be teaching people to write while they're learning to read, right? As opposed to thinking that that's a discrete skill that's taught later, right? So
that's not a thing. We don't teach people to read and write at the same time.
It's not as linked together as you think they are.
Huh.
Right?
Yeah.
There was an
entire writing arithmetic thing is not a.
There was an entire SRI program at one time that was called Writing to Read, right? And it didn't, catch on. But I think it's. I could make a lot of things that I want to add to the. I think it's a shame that anybody exits K through 12 education without understanding symbolic logic and argumentation, right? But that it's a miss, okay, if we don't give people those skills. And then there's another current that I saw recently that said we probably ought to go back to some subcategory of home economics and make sure that people know how to take out a loan, write a check, balance your checkbook, because we're graduating people who do not know how to run a household, right? And that's problematic. It's problematic, right? Let's pick another topic. It is 12:06 on the East Coast, and let's introduce. Yes, Kimberly, you got
I
another
want to
one?
wrap up that one. It's like we
Sure.
actually promote, we don't let people drive in the US without taking a test and getting a license, but you can be a manager of a team, an executive in a company, the CEO, founder of an organization without knowing anything about leadership. I teach the most basic stuff about leadership. It fits on 2 pages and people can't do it. And they aren't even required to do it in order to be responsible
Well,
for
guess what? You can
thousands
run.
of people.
Can
You
you
can
send
run
that to me,
farm
Kimberly?
equipment on a farm, all right, if you own the land, and you can be a pilot, okay, as long as you can get in the cockpit and pass the tests, okay? You do not have to be a certain age, all right? So that would be appropriate for the conversation that Mark was trying to tee up. Alan, you were going to say something? You're on mute, sir.
Sorry, Kimberly, I was just going to ask if you can maybe share that, if it's 2 pages, I will incorporate it into the curriculum for Unlimited Awesome. The whole idea of this curriculum is it's going to be fluid, and we don't have to create all the content. We just have to deliver it at the time of need. And one thing that I noticed, you mentioned how, we make people get driver's license, but one thing is, doctors, we make them, write tests and do all these things, but then they have to sign an oath. They have to, have an oath, the Hippocratic oath. And we also do it with engineers, and they have to, adhere to certain things. The problem is we now have software engineers who have no oath, no guidance, who are impacting way more people than a physician will ever do. A physician maybe touches the lives of, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 people, maybe, 3,000 people, a year. An AI researcher or computer scientist can touch millions of people in a minute, in a second. And there's no ethical guidelines around that are mandatory. So we make, engineers and lawyers and doctors do this, but we don't do it for computer science.
Yeah, but if you're going to now understand that AI can do some of the programming, does the AI need to have a certification, right? So did this become somewhat recursive?
And that's a new thing within the last
No, I
year.
know, but I'm saying it's here.
I know it's here, but it's like, holy crap, we didn't even figure out the last problem, and we're now dealing with the next problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's the world of the third millennium, folks.
Look, this AI has the good housekeeping seal of approval, right?
Yes. Learn to build bridges that ships can't take down.
Okay, thanks for putting that in, Kimberly. Appreciate it.
I'll get the employee engagement one there in a second.
All right. Anybody have a new topic, derivative thread? What are you thinking?
Hey, I've got a question for the group. This
Okay,
is
Mike
Nelson.
jump in.
Uh,
Mike, you're intermittent. Oh, we've lost Mike. All right. As soon as you're back, Mike, put it in chat, or I'll get you on. But
Tech
we lost you.
industry associations.
Mike,
I'm featuring a
rewind.
new book.
Mike, rewind. We couldn't hear you because you're in a low connectivity area.
Okay, well, let me in a corner where I'm more better connected. Am I coming through okay?
Now you're coming through fine. Start from the beginning.
Okay, I was saying that next week I'll be doing a podcast webinar with a group called WITSA, World Innovation Technology and Services Alliance. It's National Trade Associations. And the focus is a new book from ITIF on myths about AI and big data and the digital transformation. So my question for the group is if there's one misunderstanding, one myth, one meme about digital technology that you would like to erase, what would it be? And you don't have to say it, you can just type it in the chat. But I've got a long list. I've been meaning to write up the list, but it keeps getting longer. Yes, I mean,
But I also think we should bear in mind that one man's meme is another person's life. One person's myth is another person's life.
I know, but we got to
So
identify
can you say
that
the question
case.
again? Just say the question again, please.
What myth about digital technology, particularly AI, would you like to erase from the cosmic consciousness? One of mine is, my favorite example is data is the new oil, as if data were something you burn once and it's gone. It's not a commodity, and it's not all at the same value. But I'd be welcome. I'd very much like to hear what people think about this disinformation that's going on about digital technology.
I do disagree with that statement slightly because data is sold like a commodity and against our will, well, not even against our will, we give it up freely and it is constantly mined. Old data, it does go stale like old gas. And old data is, good for training large language models, but it's not good for personalized marketing. And most
But
of
the fundamental point though is that it's not something you use once and you're done with. I mean, your data can be used by 100 different companies who can then share that with 1,000 different companies. And if you don't understand that that's why it's different than oil, then you end up with lots of bad policy and bad corporate strategies.
But what we have is imperfect what we have here is imperfect metaphors. That
Yes.
oil is a metaphor for data is a metaphor for oil, or oil is a metaphor for data for some things, but it doesn't work perfectly. It's not a one-on-one.
Yeah. And
so give me examples of places where bad metaphors are making for bad decisions.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hey, Mike. I got one
like
for you. It goes back
information
120
highway.
Years. Yeah. Hey, Mike. How about this one? That it's going to that AI is going to destroy the world. Now, people with AI might destroy the world, but the idea that AI itself will, and that goes back to Rossum's Universal Robots, right? 1904, I think it was. But anyway, it's over 100 years. Warning signs, but I think the fear of AI itself is overdone. But it's really about mistrust, or I'm sorry, poorly aligned trust in systems that don't know what they're doing. That's the problem. But everybody just thinks AI can do more than it can, and they miss the point about AI in people's hands being the dangerous thing, not AI itself. So whatever you could distill out of that, that's where I would go.
That's a great example, and it ties into my first example from my list, which is the term artificial intelligence is only useful as a marketing slogan. The idea that we can define something called AI and decide to regulate it is nonsense. But the idea that it is the worst term ever, because it immediately gets people thinking about intelligent machines and things that are going to hurt me.
Yeah,
these are
Mike,
not intelligent.
I suggest a better term. I suggest a better term is. Whoops, I'm sorry. We're talking over each other.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish up one thought on that last point.
Okay.
So Jeff Hawkins has his book, 1,000 Brains, A New Theory of Intelligence. Jeff Hawkins at Numenta. He's got a really good section in his book from 2021 on this point. So thanks. Sorry.
Thanks, Harry.
I was going to say that a better term might be missing intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. But the myth that I would propose is that people are better than machines.
All right, Mike, did you have something you jump in with? Okay, so we know what Mike's question is. All right, so put some stuff in chat. He'll data mine that your ideas.
With credit.
Yeah. Mike, I might say that a lot of the darker, it may be part of the genre, but the whole Frankenstein kind of, hey, we create something and it turns on us, right, in science fiction, creates an undercurrent of unjustified fear of some of the things that we create, right? And anthropomorphize it a little bit more than it should be.
Well, that's another metaphor with AI thinks.
Yeah.
That's a particularly dangerous turn of phrase.
I mean, in between AI and machine learning is the notion of machine, perhaps intelligence or machine something, because it's different than the way that we process things. It has a form of doing its own processing, but it's different, right? So we need to recognize that it's different.
I want to say thank you to Suzanne. I have a T-shirt that says that data is the new bacon.
I have it too.
And in some
I have
ways
it too.
it works. It
Yeah,
works really well.
Yeah, I got-
Just a little bit of good data makes everything better.
It does. I got it at GeoInt at the conference at GeoInt. It was so good.
On the other hand, there is a worse analogy than data is the new oil.
Which is?
Data is the new plutonium.
Hmm.
That, if you spill it, it's really a mess to clean up. If you put too much of it together, it might blow up on you. I mean, that's a really bad metaphor, but it's in use.
Well,
My
Mike,
preferred is data is the new air.
Yeah, Mike, just kind of level up a little bit here, and your next paper can just be bad metaphors.
Well, I've done that for a couple different things. I've done that on internet governance, myths about AI, myths about internet governance. I did another piece on myths about innovation about 10 years ago, which is even more true now than it was then.
Well, when you can't, you're not in a position to put that into chat. What's the name of it again?
I will send that around. It's hard to track down. It's called
Okay.
6 Myths of Innovation. It was written for the European Institute.
Okay, well, look forward to getting that when you have a chance. I put it into chat as a reminder.
Yeah, one comment I have is like medical data, actually 30% of internet data being generated is medical data, but like 97% of that data is kept in is never looked at again. So a lot of data that's out there is not being looked at and not being used. So, the question is how do you use this data for actionable information that does meaningful things to improve society or your own individual health?
I would add that data is the world. The world is just data. What we're talking about here is recorded data. The world is not proprietary. The world can't be shared. The world can't be bought and sold, but recorded data can. And so that's a very different thing than the actual data in the world. If you're sick, that's a thing. It's just a piece of data. If the fact that you're sick is written down somewhere, it can be used against you, it can be sold, it can be bought, it can be collated, it can be all those things. So that it's the fact that we actually record this data and selectively record it from the world that is really the issue. And because we never record all of it, we only can record some of it. And so that's if we had all of it, but if we had all of it, we'd have the world. It's like the only perfect map is the world.
Yeah, they're creating digital
So
twins.
are now we discussing whether we're living in a simulation?
No.
No, that's not a simulation. What I'm saying anyway, is that we selectively take parts of the world and record them and put them into different forms like digital twins or this kind of stuff. And then we rely on that as to do various things. But that's not the world. That's just a portion of the world that we have decided to record.
Hey, Mark, no model is accurate. Some are useful. What
That's
you're
right.
discussing is the
Absolutely.
intersection of Jeff Hawkins and Jeffrey Hinton's paper, Forward Algorithms and Where He's Going with Mortal Computers. Hawkins calls out where Hinton was going in his book, and Hinton at that time was calling it capsules. The point is that analog plus digital can do a lot more than having back propagation, which assumes a perfect snapshot of parts of the world, and it's just too much. The energy draws, how exquisite it is, how brittle it is. So that's why I really would love to hear the group's impressions about where Hinton and Hawkins are going. Related is symbolic AI, but it's not quite the same thing with Melanie Mitchell and with Gary Marcus. But I think where Hinton is going is very fascinating on this point about the world and data, and our brains capture it in a different way. We capture certain parts that are useful, but it's not back propagation. There's no back propagation in nature. So that's what I would say on those points. Thanks.
Okay, so we're just at the mid or the end point for the first hour. So I want to thank everyone who joined for the first hour of this conversation. And now we're going into a half an hour of overtime. So if you're inclined to stay with us, we're delighted to have you. If you can't, thank you for joining this week for our open.
Thank you so much.
Sorry
Good
to
see
have to
everybody
sign
again.
off, but
Gotta
I
drop.
did. Yep, I did put a link to a very bad paper that has my essay
I
on
see
it.
it. Thank
I'll
you.
see if I can. Yep.
Yeah. Harry, how
Take
can I
care.
connect with you? Could you put your contact info in the chat, please?
Yes, thank you. I'll put it in. And thanks, everybody. It was good to see everybody.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you being with us. Cheers.
Likewise. Cheers.
All right.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in actionable information, and what information, data, whatever you want to call it. And then how do you maximize using that information you have? How do you maximize it to improve whatever goals you're trying to improve, right? And so, people make money because they take data and they manipulate it. People improve their health. So this is the question: is how do we take this information and have it actionable to do interesting things that hopefully improve society?
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully AI will help with that. We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting that, one of the basic tasks that AI should be able to help with, and there are demonstrable cases of this where you can ingest, the entire data set and it becomes more accessible because you can sort it. One of the companies we work with here, Richard Boyd has been on calls before, and his Ultisim company ingested the entire knowledge of the North Carolina community college system and made it more accessible to the students, the researchers, the administrators, professors. So it's that kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of times companies don't know what they don't know, right? It's because it's sitting, it's not all where you think it is, right? And so the first exercise, which is to try to find everything that you want to pull in, is actually the most useful part of the whole thing, right? Is, do I know where it is? Is it on different hard drives? Where is it, right? And then, can I bring it into, a knowable space?
Yeah, well, in fact, a great tool for AI is to give them information and say, analyze this, right? In fact, someone did a comparison of how AI can be used for data analytics versus, data, getting a data analytic person to do it. And what, at the end of the day, it's basically an AI, a human that knows what they're doing, along with AI, can be amplifying their ability to do things a lot quicker.
I think amplification is a really strong, thought. I also think that companion is a really strong thought.
Right, that co-pilot.
It's going to be different, right? It's going to look and process things differently. Is, what is the relationship that you have with a calculator, right? It doesn't do the task the way that I do it, but it gives me, good answers, right? In some cases, a lot faster than I can do it because I'm not a mathematical savant. My dad was. He could do everything in his head. It was crazy. So with that said,
I will add to that if I can.
go ahead, Mark.
The other big thing that I'm thinking about that I'm proposing is that we have to think in terms of symbiosis. So I don't think critical thinking, for example, is no longer something a human can do on their own. You have to use a machine for many, many things. If you want to critically decide if something is hidden in a message, if you want to critically decide if something is it's really a symbiotic process that we're moving into. And so you could call it extension or you could call it amplification, but it's really putting together in mutually beneficial ways the human and the machine parts to do tasks that neither can do on their own.
Yeah. I would add to that whatever, critical assessment process, so that we're not putting it in human terms, is highly dependent on the data that's available to make the decision, right? So to the degree that we get more instrumentation, that we get better measurements, we get better, data sources, we're going to get closer to being able to make, decisions that are more informed, right? And right now, we're only on the cusp of thinking about how to instrument the world around us, right? And how to get, the IoT, Doug, you know a lot about IoT. We're just on the edge of having that level of data available.
But it's
And
not
there
just
are,
data, it's the processing of the data. So for example, we
I'm
can have
saying
all the
yes, Ian.
infrared data in the world and a human can't process it.
Mark, I'm agreeing with you,
Good.
right? I'm just saying that it's that we're going to be getting even more data, right? And so the ability to take that in, to process it, and to have sufficient available energy to do that work is also going to start to become problematic, because the amount of energy that it takes to do crypto, it's expensive to ask a question in AI today. We're going to get up to a critical point where you're going to ask the question, just like communities that have crypto mines. Do I want to have electricity for housing and industry, or do I want to run the crypto farm? Right. And we're going to need to get better at how do we energize and supply energy to the system, because it's going to get increasingly hungry. It's just something we're going to have to deal with.
Agreed, but and that will be a constraint until we effectively and efficiently capture more of the energy from the sun, because more than enough energy is raining down on us every day to satisfy all these needs. We just don't know how to capture it yet.
We could have some interesting extrapolative conversations about whether
Let's
that's
do.
efficient. I think that if you looked at the arc of consumption, that you could pave the entire planet with solar panels, and at some point you would still exceed it, given the current consumption arc. We're probably going to need nuclear fusion to be able to.
Oh, absolutely. But the sun is nuclear fusion, and so what I don't think so. I know other people who argue the opposite of what you just said, that with the available things that we have and with the solar panels we have, they're not very efficient at this point. They're getting more and more efficient each time with each iteration. But I know people who argue the opposite of what you just said, and they're very serious people. So but I just don't see if thinking through the third millennium, and that's why I don't talk about the 21st century anymore. Thinking about the what we're going into and how fast it's going to be, and how the because of the acceleration and the exponential acceleration, things are going to happen so much faster. I think that the energy constraints of today, we can just sort of say, okay, just wait a few years, that's going to be solved.
All right. So I hope you're right. I have some other folks who do investment in this space that are skeptical, but I hope you're right. Suzanne, do you have in the time that we have remaining, do you have some thoughts that you want to share on biosafety tech? Because that's your area, and
Yeah.
I don't know that we've ever spent any time there. So I'm going to provoke you into sharing a little bit there.
Well, geez, yes, I have so many thoughts. It would sure take longer than this time
Well, we can put
remaining.
you in, but spark our imagination first, and then we'll put you into maybe we should get you on as a speaker.
Okay, I would love it. Just and this is a paper I co-wrote with Mei-Lin Feng, and it is about the safe and secure transfer of digital data for the G7, and I think it's at this point being considered for G20. That was the last meeting that we had, so it's very exciting. But how important that the internet will be for prosperity and for humanity to safely secure and owning our own DNA, and the information in which it's transferred. So it's an important topic for me, especially with all the advancements in biotechnology with its interface with AI, and all the advancements that are being made from protein folding to SpaceX. I am so passionate about this work and do feel and believe that the meta web will be the answer for the safe transmission of this data, and that we really need a new hyper layer of information technology to be able to securely have us own our digital lives. And another point that is very important, and a very good point that Mei-Lin brought up when I was writing the paper was, what happens to our digital ownership once we pass away? What rights do our families have for monitoring that data once we've passed on or we're incapable of our own lives, which is happening until AI can help us out on that one to extend it. But just this whole hyperspace is so fascinating to me, and I think it could possibly be the answer along working with AI. So it's another subject and another topic time, but it would be really fun to discuss it. My chapter for advancing AI for humanity is almost done. That's the name of the book, but my chapter is the intersection of AI and biotechnology. So this is a really exciting topic because it's going to cover everything, material sciences to space sciences to the internet, to everything biotechnology, which touches all of our lives. So I'm excited about this, and it's due within the next week, so I'm going to be very busy. But looking forward to PCI and the opportunity to participate with learning more about IEEE. So I'm excited about that. Anyway, that's what's going on right this moment. Thank you,
All
Kevin,
right,
very
well,
much.
I'm looking, once you get that paper finished and that becomes, perhaps the frame for, a discussion.
The paper's done. The paper has been done and accepted by G7 and G20. That is completed and been accepted.
Has it been published?
I have to.
Okay, I'm just pointing out that having been,
Right.
a
Good
part
point,
of
yeah.
peer reviewed, blah, blah, blah,
Oh,
for
for
a
sure.
long time.
It's
They
in peer
really
review.
hate it when you deliver it before it's been,
Oh, yes, yeah,
delivered and
yeah.
published, so.
Yeah, I haven't posted that yet because
right,
I
I
don't
got
have
it.
permission. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. So you'll keep us
Oh, for
abreast
sure.
of when it's that we've gotten through that, and then absolutely
Yes.
should talk about it. There's a piece I don't know whether I'm going to be able to find it immediately on digital inheritance
Yes.
that is related to this. It is came up during the time when I first started to talk to Vince Cerf about his digital vellum concept about 15 years ago. And for keeping it for posterity, being able to give to the next generation more than money, more than property, that you would be able to deliver intellectual property, right? Your ideas, everything that you learned in your lifetime becomes cumulatively available for all the people, right, that are, part of, your family in the future. What you define as family or community or, whatever, you think of as who you want to share it with, planet, okay? Then, those are very interesting,
Yes.
things to
And it's,
consider.
Kevin, this brings up an awesome point. You just triggered something. This is really what you just brought up is excellent. But when we have our driver's license, right? Do we donate our organs for research, right? Do we allow them to harvest? We give permission to do that. Will we give permission to harvest our consciousness along with our DNA? Is this a it's theoretical question, like, if people were given the right to donate your money to a good foundation or a .org for the future research of humanity, could our bodies be donated like this to further research as people do today? And then again, and people who don't, having the right to keep their data private. But it's such so much food for thought, right? Cool. But good point, Kevin. Thank you.
Bruce, you asked a question in chat. I'd be glad to answer that in a separate conversation afterward. Let's not do that admin here, all right, for the
No,
request.
great. No, that's what I was asking for.
And-
Thanks.
Yeah, just I'll put a well, you know how to get in touch with me, so just
Yeah, I'll just-
send a
I'll-
note. We'll take care of it. So I see that in chat, Mark, you said that preservation is one thing and important, inheritance and ownership is very different. Yeah, absolutely. There's in terms of current ways of thinking about it, current law, there's a natural tension in there. There's natural tension right now in terms of data training sets and intellectual property, and should intellectual property law advance, right, so that there's more sharing, all right, that there's more commons. My last calculation was only 8 to 10% of human knowledge is available on the open World Wide Web. And that means that, everything else is behind a firewall or a paywall or in a SCIF, or, is, somehow not available, right, to others. And so the question is that intentional? Oh, this is a pharmaceutical molecule and it's our proprietary, molecule for doing this, that, or the other thing. Or is it that I'd be glad to have anybody have access to this, but it's sitting on my hard drive, right? And I don't know how to share it, right? I don't know how to put it out in the public domain. And so if that's the case, we need to make it easier for people to share when they want to share, all right? And then there's the notion of, is intellectual property across all the domains that we currently protect IP, which is a derivative of the way that we thought of scarcity for land and physical objects. Is it still the right, way to think about, protecting our ideas? And, it's changing.
Precisely. I think it's going to change radically in the third millennium. And but do you have that calculation, how you go about figuring that 8% you've said frequently, and it's an important number when you think about the whole world of existence. Have you written anything about how you calculate that number?
What I did, all right, to get to that is if you do, several different kinds of searches, there are other experts that have done those calculations in different ways. And, like a a survey that you hear, we hear all these surveys during political season, plus or minus, this percentage in terms of, level of confidence is I see numbers from experts that have done this work that is as low as 5% and as high as 14%. All right. So I have a tendency to average it down to, the, below 10% range. But even if you were to be generous, okay, it's a very low percentage, all right, based on, people doing this kind of estimation.
Yeah.
And
And then the reason I ask this
go ahead.
is because it's important. And having been a consultant and pulled these kind of numbers out of my ass many, many times, and I wrote one thing in one book that said kids spend X 10,000 hours or whatever it is on over their lifetimes. It became like law. People were citing that all over the place, and it was just a back of the envelope estimate that I did. And so it's really, so if you did this, or if you've even found the particular people who have these different varying estimates, I think that would be a very good topic to make more universal, to explore, to say, because you say it a lot, and it makes me think every time you do. And so thank you. But I think we should get a better handle on that. I think that would be a very useful thing for the world to have a more efficient, a more fact-based understanding of.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll talk to the my chief scientist at Choice Flows, who's a very Richard Carson, who's Suzanne's neighbor out in San Diego area, thoughtful environmental economist, but big picture thinker, right? Is what you're suggesting, or what's being suggested in your question that's missing is a human knowledge availability index.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is we don't have a way to understand that. And you might be able to say, depending on where you live and what kind of accessibility is available to you, that the index is an aggregation of both what's available and can you get to it, all right? Because you might not, e.g. like Doug's world is you might, it might be sitting there and it's available online, but I'm in China and there's a firewall and they don't want you to have access to it, all right? So it's blocked, all right? And, that would allow you to, to understand it, all right? With several different weighting factors, across the index.
That's perfect.
I'd have to think about it, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark, and then I'll.
I was just going to say that I sometimes make blanket statements like, the internet, that because you have the internet in your pocket now and you have AI to talk to it, you can access, quote, all of human knowledge. And what you're saying is, no, you can't access that. You can access a lot of you can access all publicly available human knowledge is the right character, is the right what do you call it, bounding of that. But so publicly available is a big issue, and how much of what exists in the world is not public access and if that's really 80 or 90%, that's important.
And it depends on which public you're part of. Right?
Yes.
Because, depending on what society you're in, the firewall can point the other direction.
Or what security clearances you have.
Out, okay, that you don't want coming into your system. I remember that, when firewalls were a new technology, and I had an advisory council in Singapore with a whole bunch of customers that were from mainland China. And we started to describe it and they got excited. And then about 10 minutes in the conversation, we realized that based on the questions that are being asked, that they're not thinking about keeping things out of their servers. They're thinking about pointing the firewall out at the world to keep things away from China, right? And I said, okay, that is the way we thought about it, but you're thinking about it. So yes, you could use the technology to do that.
But
it
we
was-
also restrict it by need to know. So we restricted it. So when you say publicly available to people with a certain security clearance, to people with a this, to people with a need to know, is one way that we in this country, for example, limit information.
Yeah, but information wants to be free. There's this concept that, like when the time is right, things will happen. Like, so one inventor's over here, another inventor's over here, but eventually this invention will come out. And,
No,
in
I
fact,
want the nuclear codes, and I want them now.
Yeah, the FTC just announced that you can't have non-compete clauses. So it's except for very certain cases. So, like, okay, there's going to be the free flow of people flowing around, the free flow of information. Yeah, some of it's locked away. Though I would argue that, just like when I'm trying to find something valuable in my house and I can't find it, there's a lot of junk. There's always the concern of junk is the stuff that's valuable, but you're not using, or you maybe never use. So how do you take when do you find there's a piece of information that if you only knew where it was, it would give you lots of value.
You're
I
going
think
to
that's the
RFID
problem.
tag everything, and you're going to be walking around the house, looking.
Well, you
for
have the AI that says, okay, Doug, you need to do this kind of stuff. So, I'm still a big believer that AI will help you organize the information that you need in your life to optimize your life.
Kevin Clark Kevin Kelly has a great solution for this. He said, when you can't find something and then you finally do, put it back in the first place you looked.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that too. Yeah. So search is important. So we'll see where that goes. But
here's the issue that concerns me, Kevin, and everybody. So when you're trying to do something that you think has public good, like education, for example, and you're trying to make, say, ed tech, which people do. I'm more for epotech, but ed tech. And what happens is that everything becomes proprietary. So you do it this way, your AI does it this way, you do it this way. And so if you're a poor person trying to do education, you can't buy any one product that has all the features, because they're all distributed in the various things. And the only way to do that is through some form of eminent domain, which we do in the military. And so we say in the military that if somebody makes something that is really useful for the national defense, you can't keep it proprietary. The military gets it.
Now, there's another way, which is, the IEEE way, which is, there are some pieces that are proprietary, but they're interoperable. So here are the interoperability standards that make sure that they can communicate to each other, that they have, connection layers. It's not an either or, right? There are both and, right, kinds of things. But we're at the end of our time, and as always, it's been a stimulating conversation and discussion. We covered a lot of territory, and we don't always have to agree to be exercising the topics, right, that are important and are challenging all of us, right, as we're in the middle of a lot of change. So
Final question, how's David Norfers? Is he okay?
I
He
don't
can't.
have, I mean, that we're treading into privacy territories.
Okay.
He seems to be fine though.
Okay, good.
All right. So all the best, and in everything you do, be intentional. We will talk, all right, on the next call. Cheers.
Thank you.